A woman who knows her worth doesn't beg for attention. She commands respect in silence. We've all seen it. A man walks into a room full of women, expecting admiration, expecting to be the center of attention. But then his eyes lock onto one woman, one who isn't even looking his way. She's not fawning over him, she's not adjusting her posture to be noticed, and yet suddenly he is obsessed. The Sigma female. Men chase her, intrigued by her silence, captivated by her presence. They can't resist trying to understand her, trying to crack the code. But here's the problem. They never really win. In the end, they are the ones who lose control, who spiral into frustration. Because a Sigma female is not someone you capture, she is someone you earn. So why does this happen? Why do men become obsessed with Sigma females only to find themselves losing their grip? Today, we're diving deep into the psychology behind this phenomenon. Stick around, because by the end of this video, you'll understand exactly why Sigma females disrupt the entire dating game. And Sigma ladies, make sure you subscribe. This is your space, your power, and your knowledge. Now, let's begin. 1. The power of not needing. Men love a challenge. Men are hardwired to pursue. Since the dawn of time, their instinct has been to chase, to conquer, to prove their worth through the hunt. But here's the twist. What happens when the prey doesn't run? What happens when the woman they desire doesn't need to be caught? The Sigma female turns the game on its head because she doesn't play at all. She isn't waiting for validation, she isn't interested in shallow attention, and she doesn't adjust herself to be chosen. This frustrates men more than anything, because they are used to women who seek approval in some form or another, whether through compliments, admiration, or the typical hard-to-get act. Most women subconsciously give men the confirmation they crave, but not a Sigma female. She exists in her own world, completely unaffected by the usual dynamics of attraction, and that makes her irresistible. Men become obsessed because for the first time they feel like they have to prove something real, not just flash their status or their charm, but genuinely earn her interest. However, once they do get her attention, they panic. They realize that all the tricks they've used before don't work. They can't rely on mind games or manipulation. They have to show up as their most authentic selves, and that terrifies them. The moment they understand that the Sigma female isn't waiting for their validation, their need for control begins to slip away. They are no longer leading the game. They are playing by her rules, whether they realize it or not. 2. The role reversal. She evaluates the man, not the other way around. In traditional dynamics, men believe they are the ones making the choices. They decide who is worthy of their time, who meets their standards, and who deserves a place in their life. They assume the role of the evaluator. But with a Sigma female, the roles reverse. From the very beginning, she isn't interested in impressing a man. She's watching him, studying his every move. She is the one deciding if he aligns with her standards, if he has the depth and strength to be in her world. And this reversal throws men off balance completely. A man who is used to women seeking his approval suddenly finds himself in unfamiliar territory. He begins to wonder, am I good enough for her? Instead of feeling dominant, he feels examined. Instead of being the one setting expectations, he's now the one trying to meet them. And this realization shakes men to their core. It forces them to confront their own insecurities. A Sigma female doesn't settle for just any man. She demands emotional intelligence, confidence, and a level of maturity that most men aren't prepared for. Those who aren't strong enough will find themselves crumbling under the pressure. At first, men love the challenge. They enjoy the excitement of trying to win a woman who isn't easily impressed. But as time goes on, They realize that this isn't a game. It's a test of who they truly are. Some men rise to the occasion, while others lose control, unable to handle the pressure of being measured by a woman who refuses to be anything less than extraordinary. 3. Mystery without pretense. Men can't read her, and it drives them insane. Most women, whether consciously or subconsciously, give men clues about their emotions, thoughts, and desires. They drop hints, respond in predictable ways, and engage in subtle games of attraction. But the Sigma female, she doesn't operate by these unwritten rules. She's an enigma, not because she's trying to be, but because she naturally holds her cards close. Her thoughts aren't written all over her face. Her emotions aren't easily accessible, and her intentions remain unknown until she chooses to reveal them. This lack of predictability makes men obsessed. Why? Because men are problem solvers by nature. They are wired to analyze, decode, and understand situations. When a man encounters a woman whose patterns he can't predict, it activates his competitive instincts. He wants to figure her out. He wants to be the one who gets her when no one else does. At first, this chase is thrilling. He studies her, tries different approaches, and works harder than he ever has to gain insight into her world. But over time, frustration starts creeping in. Unlike other women who eventually reveal their emotions through texts, social media, or casual conversations, the Sigma female remains composed. She doesn't overshare, she doesn't play into emotional manipulation, and she certainly doesn't give a man the satisfaction of knowing where he stands too soon. This drives men into obsession mode. They check their phones waiting for a reply that never comes instantly. They replay conversations trying to decode what she meant. They overanalyze her calmness, mistaking it for disinterest or, worse, rejection. In reality, she's just living her life, unbothered by the emotional roller coaster most people ride in relationships. But here's where men start to lose control. They realize they aren't the ones leading the emotional dynamic. They thought they were the hunters, but in reality, they are the ones caught in the web of uncertainty. And that's something most men are simply not prepared for. 4. Absolute independence. Men struggle to handle a woman who doesn't need them. For centuries, society has ingrained the idea that men should be the providers, the protectors, the ones women depend on for stability and guidance. Even in modern relationships, many men expect to play a dominant role, whether emotionally, financially, or even in decision-making. But what happens when they meet a woman who doesn't need them? The Sigma female is self-sufficient in every sense of the word. She is financially independent, emotionally stable, and mentally resilient. She doesn't look for a man to complete her. She is already whole. And this disrupts the traditional balance of power that most men are accustomed to. At first, many men find this independence attractive. They admire her strength, her drive, and her ability to navigate the world on her own terms. But admiration soon turns into insecurity when they realize she won't rely on them in the ways they expect. She doesn't need his validation. She doesn't seek his permission. She makes her own choices without hesitation. And worst of all, in their eyes, she is perfectly fine on her own. If a man enters her life, it's because she wants him there, not because she needs him to fill a void. This realization shakes men to their core. A woman who needs them gives them a sense of purpose. A woman who is indifferent to whether they stay or go forces them to question their own value. And here's where the real crisis begins. Because when a man realizes that his presence in a Sigma female's life is optional, he either steps up to prove his worth or spirals into an existential panic. Some men will try to regain control by testing her, trying to elicit a reaction, or even resorting to manipulative tactics. But the Sigma female, she sees through all of it. And the moment she senses insecurity disguised as control, she simply walks away. For a man who is used to being needed, this is devastating. He doesn't just lose the woman, he loses a sense of self-importance. And that's why men, once obsessed with a Sigma female, often find themselves losing control in the end. 5. She doesn't follow the herd. Men struggle to predict her actions. Most women, whether consciously or subconsciously, conform to social expectations in relationships. They follow certain dating norms, respond to emotional cues in predictable ways, and often seek external validation from friends, family, or society. This predictability makes it easy for men to navigate relationships. They know the steps, they understand the dynamics, and they feel in control. But then comes the Sigma female, who shatters every expectation. She doesn't follow the script. She doesn't behave the way men expect. She makes decisions based on her own internal logic, not societal norms. This unpredictability throws men off because they can't anticipate her moves. One day, they think they have her figured out, and the next, she does something that completely contradicts their assumptions. Men are used to women who play by established rules. If a man ignores a text, most women will react in a certain way, either confronting him, waiting anxiously, or attempting to mirror his behavior. But the Sigma female? She simply moves on with her day as if nothing happened. She doesn't wait by her phone, she doesn't overanalyze, and she certainly doesn't try to manipulate the situation. This lack of emotional dependency is what baffles men the most. They try to test her, expecting jealousy, emotional reactions, or a need for reassurance. But instead of playing along, she remains unaffected. She doesn't fight for attention, she doesn't compete with other women, and she doesn't bend to the pressure of expectation. And this is where men begin to spiral. When they realize that they can't predict her, they start to panic. Their usual tactics, whether it's charm, aloofness, or even manipulation, don't work. She exists outside the usual framework of relationships, and that means the control they thought they had is slipping through their fingers. The deeper a man falls into this uncertainty, the more obsessed he becomes. He starts seeking answers, trying to understand why she doesn't react like others, why she isn't emotionally affected by his presence or absence. The answer is simple. She is not looking for validation from anyone, especially not from a man who thinks he can outmaneuver her. In the end, the inability to predict her becomes too much for some men to handle. Some keep chasing, hoping to solve her mystery. Others retreat, realizing they are out of their depth. Either way, the Sigma female walks away untouched, completely in control of her own life. 6. No excessive compliments. Men don't get the emotional high. They expect men, whether they admit it or not, thrive on admiration. Even the most confident men enjoy the reassurance of being desired, appreciated, and praised. Compliments, attention, and admiration feed their ego, making them feel valued and important. Most women, intentionally or not, provide this validation in abundance. They compliment a man's looks, his achievements, his intelligence, whether out of genuine admiration or simply as part of the social dance of attraction. But the Sigma female, she does none of that unless it's truly earned. She doesn't hand out compliments lightly. She doesn't boost a man's ego just for the sake of it. If she says something positive about him, it's because she genuinely means it, not because she wants to keep him interested or stroke his confidence. This rare and selective approval drives men crazy because it makes them feel uncertain about where they stand. At first, men assume she's just playing hard to get. They think if they push a little more, try a little harder, they'll eventually get the validation they crave. But as time goes on, they realize this isn't a game. This is just who she is. She doesn't see the need to flatter someone who hasn't earned it, and she certainly doesn't place a man on a pedestal just because he expects it. This lack of excessive admiration leaves men in a state of emotional withdrawal. They don't get their usual fix of feeling adored, which makes them work harder to earn her attention. But the more effort they put in, the more they realize that they are chasing something they can't control. Some men will grow resentful, feeling like they are being denied something they believe they deserve. Others will become more obsessed, desperate for even the smallest sign of approval. But the Sigma female? She remains unaffected. She will only acknowledge true value when she sees it, and if a man isn't worthy, she has no problem letting him go without a second thought. This dynamic is why men, once drawn into the Sigma female's world, find themselves spiraling. They don't just lose control over her, they lose control over their own emotions, trying to earn something that was never theirs to demand in the first place. 7. Unshakable composure. Men can't get under her skin. Most people, whether men or women, have emotional triggers. They react to jealousy, rejection, or provocation in ways that reveal their vulnerabilities. This is why many men use specific tactics to test women, whether it's withdrawing affection, making them jealous, or playing mind games. It's all an attempt to see how much control they have over a woman's emotions. But the Sigma female, she doesn't take the bait. She doesn't react to passive-aggressive comments. She doesn't get flustered by mind games. And she certainly doesn't let a man's behavior dictate her emotions. This level of self-control is something most men are simply not prepared for. Men are used to being able to push buttons and get a reaction. They test boundaries, expecting some level of emotional volatility, but when their usual tactics fail, they don't know how to proceed. They might ignore her, expecting her to chase. Instead, she enjoys her solitude. They might try to provoke jealousy, expecting her to fight for their attention. Instead, she remains indifferent. This emotional stability is intimidating. It makes a man question his own power in the relationship. He realizes that no matter what he does, he can't disrupt her inner peace. And that's when the obsession begins, because a woman who cannot be controlled emotionally is a woman who holds all the power. 8. Natural charisma. Her presence alone commands attention. Charisma isn't about being the loudest person in the room. It's not about seeking attention or forcing others to notice you. True charisma is effortless. It's a quiet confidence, a magnetic energy that draws people in without trying. The Sigma female embodies this kind of presence. She doesn't need to dominate conversations or demand attention. Yet, wherever she goes, people take notice. It's not because she's actively seeking validation, but because she carries herself in a way that naturally commands respect. For men, this kind of effortless charisma is both alluring and unsettling. They are used to women who work to gain attention through flirtation, loud personalities, or social validation. But the Sigma female, she exists in a different category. She doesn't seek attention, yet she gets it. She doesn't chase admiration, yet people admire her. This dynamic puts men in a difficult position. They want to be the most interesting person in her world, but they quickly realize that she doesn't revolve around anyone. She has her own gravitational pull, and instead of her being drawn toward them, they find themselves drawn toward her. At first, men mistake this attraction for something they can control, but over time, they realize that the more they try to hold on to her, the more elusive she becomes. And that's when the power shifts entirely in her favor. 9. She embraces solitude. Men don't know how to handle a woman who's happy alone. Most women, even the strong ones, have a natural desire for companionship. They seek emotional connection, intimacy, and partnership. While this is a normal human trait, it often leads to a certain level of dependence in relationships. The Sigma female, however, is different. She doesn't just tolerate solitude, she thrives in it. She enjoys her own company, values her independence, and finds fulfillment outside of relationships. This completely disrupts the traditional power dynamics in dating. Men are used to women who want relationships. They expect women to invest emotionally, to seek commitment, and to desire stability. But when they meet a Sigma female, they encounter someone who doesn't need them to feel whole. She isn't searching for validation through a relationship, and she certainly isn't afraid of being alone. For men, this creates a crisis. If she doesn't need them, then what role do they play in her life? How do they assert dominance or importance when she's just as happy without them? Some men will try to break her independence by making her feel like she's missing out on something. Others will pull away, expecting her to chase. But none of these tactics work. She remains centered, unaffected, and unwilling to compromise her sense of self just to make someone else feel needed. And that is what makes her so powerful. She isn't choosing a man out of necessity. She's choosing purely out of desire, and only the most secure men can handle that reality. 10. She sets the rules. Men struggle when they're not in control. Men are conditioned to believe that they set the rules in relationships. They decide when to commit, when to invest emotionally, and when to walk away. They assume the role of the leader, believing that women will adjust to their framework. But the Sigma female is different. She dictates the terms of engagement. She decides who earns her time, who gets her attention, and who is worthy of a place in her world. This reversal of control is something most men are not equipped to handle. At first, men find this intriguing. They enjoy the challenge of trying to win over a woman who isn't easily impressed. But as time passes, they begin to realize that they are not in control. She is. She isn't bending to their expectations, she isn't seeking their approval, and she certainly isn't tolerating mediocrity. This realization shakes men to their core. For the first time, they are in a position where they are being evaluated, where their worth is being measured not by superficial qualities, but by true substance. And that is where many men begin to lose control. Those who can't handle the shift in power will try to regain control through manipulation, withdrawal, or even walking away in frustration. But the Sigma female, she remains exactly where she was, unmoved, unapologetic, and completely in charge of her own destiny. In the end, the men who succeed with a Sigma female are the ones who don't try to control her, but instead stand beside her as equals. But the rest? They either break under the pressure or fade into the background, realizing they were never truly ready for a woman like her. A Sigma female is a disruptor. She challenges the status quo. She forces men to confront their own insecurities, and she exists outside of the traditional relationship framework. Most men, despite their initial obsession, cannot handle the intensity of a woman who refuses to be controlled. Some will try to win her over, thinking she's just another challenge to conquer. Others will walk away, overwhelmed by the reality of dealing with someone who doesn't fit into their predefined expectations. But the truth remains, only the strongest men, the ones who don't fear a woman's power, will ever stand a chance. Sigma ladies, the question now is this. Do you think most men are capable of evolving to meet a Sigma female's standards? Or will they continue to fall apart under the weight of their own insecurities? Let me know in the comments. And don't forget to subscribe, because here, in this space, we understand the strength of being a Sigma.